Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to try a different type of construction here on a card. I've always liked the idea of bodies of water being almost like mirrors for what's happening in the sky. In my videos, I'm always mentioning things about the repetition of textures and colors and whatnot in both the sky and on your surface areas, but bodies of water are even more so reflections of what can be going on in the sky. It's an excuse to bring additional colors and textures and interesting celestial types of bodies into the landscape. So you're kind of doubling what is often the most interesting part of a scene, which is interesting colors that are happening in the sky. So we have the silver foil, almost mirrored cardstock here. It's like chrome. So I thought, why don't we take advantage of that property or characteristic of that surface and really try and make a mirrored surface down here. So I'm figuring things out as I go along here. I happen to be using the Brilliance ink here, but you can use a solvent ink like a StazOn or whatnot. It might even be better. I think you get a little bit of a thicker impression with Brilliance ink just because it's a thicker type of ink in pigment, but you'll want to heat sit as you go and also spray seal in the end result. Now, spray sealing this type of surface, you just have to be careful because if we're going for a mirrored type of surface, if you spray seal it too much, it turns into more of like a brushed aluminum surface as opposed to like a chrome. So when I do spray seal this, eventually what I'll do is I'll probably just put a paper towel right in the open area of the surface of the water down there, just so I don't spray seal it. What I want to do is I just want to spray seal the imagery. Okay. So that being said, maybe a StazOn or you can emboss these types of images right onto the silver paper, and you wouldn't need to worry about spray sealing it. I do add in some extra shadow work in a vignette, and that is something that I'd want to spray seal, and you just can't do that with like a StazOn type of ink because it dries too fast. But if you just did a vignette and you just had the ink around the perimeter, all you'd need to do is spray seal the perimeter and not get any of that residual overspray in the middle where you want that reflective quality to be. Okay, now originally I was thinking that I would have to kind of include this portion of the image in the sky area, but it just didn't match up enough. I thought it looked awkward, so I'll change up later on. So this is the type of thing that you have to do. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm trimming the horizon area of the image, and that's where the fold of the card is going to take place because I want the silver portion, the mirrored portion, just to be in the lake. Okay, now it's going to go into the rocks too, and I mean, you could cut out those rocks or something like that, but I'm not going to bother with something like that. Yeah, I could have, and maybe I don't know, maybe that would be more effective than having that silver right in the rocks as well. But I don't know. We'll figure that out for another. We'll figure that out another time. I thought it looked okay, though, having kind of a portion of this image, the Lakeside Cove Large, mirrored, and the top portion of it just being on the directly onto the folded dark blue card. Okay, so just using some crafter's tape here, I'm going to get this started with that part of the construction being complete. I don't know, I think it gave me a little bit more of an idea of what things are going to be looking like having this on there. You could work on these separately and just kind of add it in towards the end, but I wanted to see what was happening here along in the process. Okay, I just had that little bit of I don't know, whatever, overage or whatever. So I just trimmed that off. I think it's better to work on a little bit of a larger piece of that silver foil, because then you can just trim it off at the end, and you can trim off a little bit of the card with it, so you get a nice flush merging of the two of these surfaces here. Okay, so tearing a paper towel. There is a little bit of instruction to that. If you tear a paper towel one way, there seems to be a grain with paper towel. So if you tear with a grain, you get a real straight tear. But if you tear against the grain, you get more of these kind of irregular, rounded tears. And that's what you want for this type of cloud template usage for the paper towel, okay? Now, when I probably should have, fine-tuned that tear a little bit. It looks a little bit more like mountains or peaks or something like that when I start adding this in there. And you can, you tear it and then just, tear off a couple little areas to make them look a little bit more rounded. But I do have a separate video on how to do these clouds. So you can't, okay, now with a normal template, like a plastic template, you just stick with the template, okay? I happen to think that these paper towels are, certainly from a price standpoint, they're extremely cheap, right? But I think it gives us a real kind of organic look to our clouds. And, I don't know, realistic, maybe, I don't know. I hesitate to use the word realism when we're doing anything with stamping and pigment ink or something like that. But here's what you do. You have to add those in with the template. But then, if you really want them to look real billowy and more natural, you have to freehand in right over the top of those clouds that you added in there. So be generous with it. And if you notice, there are areas that are whiter than others. It's where I'm building up the ink a little bit more. And what you want, that's what you want. You don't want it to be so even. Okay, that seems to be the kind of the idea on a lot of media applications these days for whatever it might be. But in this, you want it to be a little bit more irregular, and that looks a little bit more natural that way. Where you have things kind of built up a little bit more and they're whiter, what you're saying is that light is hitting it stronger in those areas, or there's a concentration of moisture in the air that's thicker in those areas. So it's being, that light hitting that area is more reflective. Okay, now, because I'm doing this reflection type of idea, I wanted to create more clouds. So what I'm going to do, and another thing that I was thinking about doing was I was thinking about adding a moon in here. That would be reflecting in the lake's surface. But I changed my mind later on because I like the look of the clouds just as is. So, but having clouds coming from the horizon and also from above, I think really added to it. So this is one of the things that I learned. If you like those clouds, then add quite a bit of them up in the sky. Okay, because you'll have more of that white reflected in that silver down below. The silver, I mean, it's kind of a neutral value, but it is reflective of anything that's going on in your room. So it often looks darker than light. I mean, it would be light if, you had if I had a light shining up on my ceiling right now, it would be really light in there. And you can see where it's reflecting some of my studio light right here that I'm working in. But overall, it's kind of dark. Okay, now I'm adding in some clouds down into the water, but I later kind of figured out I probably didn't need to do that because it was reflecting really well, or better than I thought it would, just from the cloud portion up above. So I probably didn't need to do this. I don't know. Maybe it enhanced it a little bit. I don't know. But I do end up removing some of those some of that white area in my water when I realized, oh, this is, working pretty good. Okay, so going with some foreground here, I wasn't sure if I was going to add this foreground in here or not, but I think I don't know, I think it really needed it from a compositional standpoint. You didn't really have to do it, like say if you had like some large quote stamp or something like that. You can stamp it down there in the water, or you can stamp the foreground like this and a quote stamp or a word stamp down there in the water. Or you can write something. It would be interesting to do too is potentially is you take a white acrylic paint pen or something like that and you freehand like a letter to someone in that water. I mean, wouldn't that be interesting? It would certainly create a pretty dynamic surface here. Okay, so this is the Pines and Rocks Large, again being stamped with the Brilliance, and I'll heat set this afterwards. Okay. And I'm still kind of, when I'm doing this, I'm still not knowing what this is going to look like at all. It's not coming together yet. I mean, I know in theory kind of the thing that I'm going after, but I still don't know what I'm doing in this piece or how I'm going to resolve that top portion where the trees go up into the clouds. Okay. All right. So heat setting here. This video is sped up 2 times. Okay. But heat setting this, the Brilliance ink takes, it's a few seconds. If you're heat setting foil, just be careful, just move your heat gun around so that you don't have it in any one area for too long, because the surface of that foil it kind of puckers and I don't know, it gets a little bit shriveled. It changes the characteristic of the foil a little bit. But that's only if you're not really moving it at all and really heating it up. Okay. Different foils might be different. This is a pretty heavy foil cardstock. I'd say it's probably akin of like 120-pound weight, or if it's in points, I would say it's like I don't know, it goes like 10, 12, 14, but I don't know, it's probably kind of like a 13 point, so pretty thick. It's real heavy kind of cardstock weight, even or postcard weight almost, maybe even thicker. Okay, so I'm adding in some additional Brilliance ink, and this is what you can do with Brilliance. You can't do this with StazOn or something like that because it just dries instantly, where this Brilliance, it doesn't dry at all. I mean, instantly. I could let it dry overnight and it would be no problem. Or you can heat set it very quickly. But kind of, creating that vignette towards the bottom, it's not real visible again because the silver is fairly dark when it's reflecting, the darker areas of the room or whatnot. But see, I'm starting to see the light here in terms of what this piece could look like with this reflections going on here. But this is not really working for me. Like I'm wearing a red shirt and that's really reflecting in there. That doesn't really work for me. Okay. I mean, it could, if we brought some additional silver effects into the piece, silver stars or something like that, that might be kind of interesting to bring a little bit of continuity, but that to me is a little bit awkward. So, what occurred to me when looking at this was, oh, I think I could have just stamped the top portion of the Lakeside Cove Large directly on there. So I'm testing right now if I could tear the crafter's tape off, and it's stuck pretty good, but I know I was able to I was managing to peel it up somewhat. It put a crease into the card down in about and see it's tearing off the card, and I thought, okay, hold on, let me stop right here, and I can just get the image in there, so I don't need to peel the whole thing off, luckily. So we're just going in here with the Brilliance again. Now the Brilliance on this, I don't know, very porous, non-coated paper is a good idea, because you'll get a nice thick impression on there. You don't need to heat set the Brilliance on like a matte paper, which this pre-folded 5x7 card is. Okay, so see, it stamps right in there. It stamps right over the white clouds, no problem. And we're stamping up both sides. And I don't need to match it up perfectly. When I design these stamps, all you have to be is close, and it'll merge up perfectly, okay? And watch this when I fold this up. You know, I didn't need to measure anything out or use a positioner or something like that. That Lakeside Cove top and bottom match up just fine. No, it doesn't match up fine in terms of kind of visual characteristics here, but this card isn't really designed to be viewed open like this as one piece, okay? Now, when I did that and all that handling, I put a bunch of fingerprints into the uh, the foil impressions and foil toning and whatnot. You can see that big fingerprint right in the middle of that white cloud too. Okay. It's a good and bad thing. What this characteristic does is it allows us to really blend, and then if you don't like something, you can just remove it, right? So it's completely user friendly, okay? But as you're doing it, you know, there's a chance of removal that's going to be happening. So I'm adding a lot of white ink down here, but like I said, later on I realized, oh, that's kind of getting in the way of being able to see those reflections up in the sky. So see, I added it down, and then I'm just kind of dabbing it. I'm not dabbing it to dab on. I'm doing this dabbing to remove some of it, to kind of blend it out because I added too thick of an application of white. But later on I realized, yeah, we don't need that at all. You know, let's just remove a lot more of it. So I think I remove even more later on. I don't remove it all. I think maybe it enhances it a little bit, but see, now I'm checking out the reflective quality of it. See that? And almost that extra little white, maybe it gives it a little bit more of a three-dimensional look. Okay, now I'm seeing exactly where the lower portion, you know, the mirrored area reflects what's going on in the sky. So I think I realized one of the things I could do is I can raise the lower cloud on the right a little bit higher into the sky so I get more of that reflecting in the water. Okay, so just checking on some of these areas right here. There's some areas around the card that aren't flush, like right there. See that little overhang? So what you do is you know, stamp everything out, and then, you know, do your trimming here. Now, I trimmed off a large portion of the bottom portion before because there was like an inch of it, but see that when you trim it like that, then you'll have a nice flush merging of the two different papers. So, you know, you can trim off, you know, both together here. And I just trimmed off a tiny little portion. Okay, so now it's real flush, okay? All right, had a little piece of paper there, and just in scraping that off, it removed some of my white there. Like I said, it's very prone. Okay, now here's where I'm raising some of the clouds there on the lower right higher to get more of that reflecting down in the water, right? Because it has to be higher when this is folded at a, you know, like a 45-degree angle. And then I'm coming down from above too. I thought the clouds are really the kind of the star of the scene, and especially the reflective area of it. So we might as well get more of it showing in that reflective area down there. See that? It just I don't know, it looks more realistic. So I'm starting to really like that look there. And let's see. See, I'm going with a dry cotton ball, and it's like, oh, let's just get rid of a bunch of this because we don't really need it. The mirror portion of this is working fine without. Okay. All right, so we have that. And my original intention too was to have this kind of moon rising. You know, as someone opens their card, they'll have movement, you know, as they're opening the card, but also that moon would be moving in the reflection too. So this is the glow-in-the-dark moon. And I think that looks pretty cool, but I thought, I don't know, just the clouds alone look pretty cool. And it's more of a daytime type of scene right now without the moon. See, that moon down there would be kind of interesting. If I'm giving this card to a kid, I'm putting that glow-in-the-dark moon in there, or glow-in-the-dark stars or something like that. But for me, I really like just that cloud area. So fun construction, and I, you know, did a bunch of extra things in there that I wouldn't need to do, but this could be a real fast scene to do, and I hope you try it out. Thanks so much for watching.